Okay. Welcome, everyone, and thank you for attending this 1619 Education Conference. We are super excited to celebrate the work of our network teams with you. This is the Intergenerational Community Partnerships Panel. My name is Jessica Mims, and I am a program coordinator for the Pulitzer Center's K-12 education team. And I am joined by Dr. Tamyka Morant, Matt Olson, Shauna Russell, and Della Bryant, and also Shamia Truitt-Martin. So today we will begin with a brief introduction of the Pulitzer Center and our 1619 education programs. Then we will hear how this cast of amazing educational leaders have built networks of learning and resistance in their communities, utilizing the 1619 project. And before closing, we all will have an opportunity to answer questions from the audience. And at the very end of this conversation, we will make sure that you know how to continue to stay engaged this weekend. So, Q&A setup. Your voice is very important to us, and we want to help you stay connected to this conversation by posing questions. So please use the Q&A anytime you have a question you want to ask our guests during this presentation. If your question is meant for a specific panelist, please include their name in your question. We will try to get to as many of your questions as possible during the Q&A portion of this event. Another important reminder is that your registration link will be the same for the entire conference, but the webinar will close after each event. So to rejoin, just click on that same link when it is time for the next event, like you did so for this webinar. So, to introduce the Pulitzer Center, I want to share our mission. The Pulitzer Center's mission is to champion the power of stories and to make complex issues relevant and inspire action. And we believe that journalism can be a key element for mobilizing society, and that people and communities who actively engage with systematic challenges will find solutions together. So this slide here captures our 5 main journalistic focus areas at this time: global health, climate and environment, peace and conflict, information and artificial intelligence, and also human rights. So we are proud to be an education partner for the 1619 project. Our 1619 Education Network consists of teams of educators from across the country who will collaborate together with journalists, historians, and Pulitzer Center staff to create, teach, and share curricular resources utilizing the 1619 project. These educators work with students in a variety of academic contexts, and this panel will give you a glimpse of how teachers working with students at various levels approach using the project in their classrooms. You can find brief panelist bios on the conference website, and each panelist will introduce themselves and their work before we move into the panel questions. So our first speaker is Tamyka. And yeah, you can go ahead and get started.
Yes, I'm Tamyka Morant. I'm at Bruce-Monroe at Parkview, a dual language public school serving grades pre-kindergarten through 5th grade. And we embarked on an ambitious journey to develop a year-long social-cultural competence curriculum centering around the powerful narrative born on the water. Our curriculum is thoughtfully structured into 4 quarterly themes: identity, systems and communities, global citizens, agents of change, and storytelling, with a focus on artivism. The identity unit serves as a foundational pillar, engaging students in a deep exploration of their own identities and those of others that may be different from their own, fostering empathy and understanding. Students connect concepts of race and ethnicity while also critically examining the impact of racism on the documentation of family histories. They delve into the nuances of language, recognizing its historical use as a tool for colonization and domination. Furthermore, students explore the rich humanity, culture, and lives of individuals before their forced displacement, with a particular emphasis on sovereignty, freedom, and community connectedness. Next slide, please. At the heart of our work lies a deliberate commitment to fostering a learning environment grounded in principles of anti-racism, equity, and justice. This ethos extends into our approach to family and community partnerships, epitomized by the anti-racist family engagement framework we've adopted. This framework, which you can see on the right, serves as a guiding light, illuminating our path forward. We recognize that true success in our endeavors hinges upon the active involvement of our families as equitable partners. Despite having only 6 curriculum writers, we understood the imperative of engaging our larger school community in this transformative journey. Approaching this collaboration as a learning opportunity for our entire community, we sought to cultivate a sense of shared ownership and collective responsibility. We understood that the depth and richness of our project would be greatly enhanced by the diverse perspectives and insights contributed to by our entire school community. Next slide, please. From the project's inception, our community partners have been instrumental in supporting our mission. Teaching for Change DC and Art Around the Corner from the National Gallery of Art have played pivotal roles in facilitating various professional development opportunities for our curriculum writers and BMPV staff. We adopted the Learning for Justice framework for teaching hard history as a strategic blueprint for planning a year-long scope and sequence across all grades. This framework, coupled with ongoing guidance from Teaching for Change DC, empowered us to engage families and the community as true partners in our endeavors. It was not about just involving them as passive observers or as audience members, but really collaborating with them every step of the way, ensuring their voices are heard and their perspectives were valued. Moreover, the National Gallery of Art generously provided essential resources to support our curriculum implementation. They purchased a copy of Born on the Water for each student in our school and a copy of The Anti-Racist Kid, which was another mentor text that we used for students in grades 3rd through 5th. Additionally, they supplied all the necessary materials and supplies that we needed for the curriculum projects. Having the text readily available for each student has been pivotal to the success of our curriculum implementation. Furthermore, their provision of additional copies of Born on the Water in English and Spanish and the 1619 project book for families underscores our commitment to supporting curriculum development and implementation beyond the classroom. In essence, their unwavering support was instrumental in advancing our mission of promoting equity, justice, and inclusivity in education. Next slide, please. Although the first unit was initially developed by the curriculum writers, due to the timing of the grant, we made a concerted effort to involve families and staff members from the onset. Their input was particularly valuable in shaping the culminating projects of the unit and in devising strategies to engage families more authentically in the curriculum design and implementation process. Recognizing the importance of building shared background knowledge and language for curriculum implementation, we facilitated collaborative sessions involving families and teachers. This step was crucial to prevent unintentional harm and to ensure that students had a positive and accurate learning experience. Through various norming protocols on language and content, we fostered a shared understanding amongst all of us as stakeholders. Given the diverse composition of our school community, it was also imperative to lay this foundation of shared knowledge. We understood that without a comprehensive understanding of historical context, we would not be able to effectively teach critical topics, such as the history of slavery in the United States. This unit intersected with our Teach Central America program as well, so that necessitated intentional connections between the entire African diaspora and a global understanding of slavery's impact to contextualize the specific relevance of the 1619 project for our entire school community. Ultimately, the success of our students' family history projects, their IM poems, their identity maps, their zines, can be attributed to the collective effort of our larger community. By ensuring that families were actively involved and empowered to partner with their students, we fostered a collaborative environment where everyone was aligned towards the same goals. This collaborative approach not only enriched the learning experience, but also ensured the comprehensive nature of the projects. Next slide, please. In addition to engaging families and staff, we place a strong emphasis on gathering feedback directly from our students. After all, they are the ones who ultimately determine the effectiveness of our curriculum implementation. We want to know what they learn, what they're eager to learn next, how their perspective and attitudes may have changed because of the learning experiences. We also assess whether they have met the learning goals set by the community and whether we have reached our instructional goals as educators. At the end of every unit, we've established a routine of polling students in grades K through 5 to provide us with feedback on their learning journey. This year, we took it a step further by creating space at our community planning meetings for students, inviting representatives from the Student Government Association, who is 3rd to 5th graders, to share their insights alongside their families and teachers. This collaborative approach yielded invaluable feedback and guidance for our ongoing curriculum development efforts. Engaging students in these meaningful and tangible ways was groundbreaking, and it provided tangible evidence of our efforts to disrupt institutional racism in very age-appropriate ways. I want to conclude by sharing a quote from an article by our community partners, the DC Area Educators for Social Justice, which is a Teaching for Change project. They aptly note, another palpable thread that is felt every time we visit BMPV is their community connectedness. They value all voices in their community. The school community is partaking in identity exploration via their participation in the 1619 project with the Pulitzer Center. The whole community at Bruce-Monroe, students, faculty and staff, caregivers, and partner organizations collaborates on this tapestry. They host brief teach-ins, put together engaging informative displays, and wow us with live performances. They pull the many threads of their learning and do it seamlessly. I think this quote encapsulates the essence of our community organizing efforts and underscores the importance of fostering a collaborative and inclusive learning environment for all. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Morant. Next up, we will have Matt Olson with the Partnership Academy.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me and allowing me to present some of the great work that we did at Partnership Academy this year. Partnership Academy is a pre-K to 8th grade charter school. We are located in Richfield, Minnesota, which is just south of Minneapolis. This is our 24th year as a school, and we're committed to values and action of social justice and equity work. So that's kind of at the core of our essence as a school. And this year we were fortunate to partner with the 1619 project in grades K through 5. And our themes collectively as a school have been around solidarity and looking at ways where as a collective, as a community, we can work toward change. So specifically for our work as 3rd grade teachers, we did a Change Makers project. This is actually our 6th year doing this project, but our 1st year pairing with the 1619 project. And it has enhanced and provided a depth to our students' understanding that didn't exist prior to this. And so we were just absolutely thrilled with what the students were able to produce by providing a little bit more context into what we were trying to do. So our unit focused around 3 kind of main themes. So we had our students first learning about history, government, and inequality. The second phase was to read nonfiction biographies specifically about change makers. And then finally, we passed the torch to the students, asking them to write their own ideas about how to make the world better. So this was a 4-week unit for our 3rd graders. And we can progress into the next slide. We'll kind of give you an overview of what we did with our studies. So we had 2 parts to our instruction. So we had a mentor text / read aloud section where we explored different texts. And then we had a core knowledge theme as well, where we kind of dug deeper into the context of a lot of the historical needs and let the students run with it there. So the mentor texts were specifically chosen. Some were from the 1619 project, like Born on the Water, where we kicked off our unit. Others have been in our school for a long time. One of our school's missions is to provide windows and mirrors for students who are 90% Latinx, primarily 1st generation and 2nd generation in the United States. So week 1, we centered around Born on the Water. Week 2, we took a deep dive into some of the people who have made changes in history. In week 3, then we accelerated into the present and looked at change makers that are making a difference now, as well as our community change maker panel. And then in week 4, when we passed the torch to the students for their writing, we looked at primary texts of change makers that use the power of writing in order to advocate for change. And as an ongoing kind of throughout, we did feature the Kid President videos about how to change the world. One in a lighthearted way of, he brings great humor and great entertainment into it, but also that serious theme of this is a kid that is making changes in the world. And that is a theme that kind of came up a lot with our 3rd graders. Your kids, but you have a vision of what you want to see in the world. And if we skip to the next slide, that's kind of a big piece that will come up. So our first kind of mission or goal in week 1 was to give kids a background and a context of why do we need change makers in the world. And this was a big hole in our teachings previously, because we were studying change makers, but kids were a little confused about, like, why did people need to make changes? And this is where we really used Born on the Water and some of the 1619 themes of saying there were inequalities, there were problems, there were significant issues in the way that our country was founded, and who had power. And that was an essential question that we had kicking off the unit: is what is power, who has it, and what does it mean? What does that power mean to everything? And one of the more powerful moments in our early discussions was one of our students raised their hand and said, as a kid, I often feel powerless. And to me as an educator, I said, wow, that's one of those themes we need to touch on right away, because I remember feeling that as a kid as well. And so that was something that we really moved into and kind of went into as a class. Okay, so what is power? How do we gain power? If we skip to the next slide. So we discussed kind of the impacts of inequities in power, and we talked about a lot of the different inequalities we've seen throughout history, from women's voting to slavery to the Trail of Tears to segregation to World War II internment camps. And the question I got as an educator a lot of times was, wow, you're telling this to 8-year-olds, 9-year-olds. Is that appropriate? How are they responding? How are they reacting to it? And my response was kind of twofold. First, I remember as a student being told one version of history, and then getting to high school and college, and then finding out about all of these things that I hadn't heard of in my initial background. And I felt a disillusionment and a frustration as a high school and college student that those things hadn't been shared with me at a younger and earlier age. And my second response was always that kids understand these things of fairness, equality, and a lot of times better than grown-ups do. And so we can lean into the kids. They understood it. And when they were asked and given the opportunity and the space to articulate their feelings about inequalities and what they saw, their responses were so inspiring and so deep that it was a phenomenal just exercise in saying, wow, kids really can do this high level thinking and understand these big ideas. Let's go to the next slide. So week 2, we took a deep dive into some change makers and what change makers did to fight back against things that they found were unequal and unjust. And so we've focused in on specifically a lot of change makers who stood up and took action and talked about how did they get power. And so we discussed a lot of their change maker strategies, speeches, marches, strikes, boycotts, and specifically looked at change makers throughout history that made a huge impact. And we were specific about having change makers representative of all different backgrounds, all different historical contexts, with the idea that this is a solidarity thing. This is a community kind of thing. And one of my friends that helped design this unit with me and work through this unit with me really made a powerful point. And she said, the access point you're giving kids is stories. So when we're reading biographies, the way that they're entering into this conversation is through stories and through stories of change makers. And one of our change maker panelists the next week shared an African proverb with the students and said, if I know your story, then I cannot hate you. And the students just made connections with that so much that we understand each other and we learn to respect and appreciate each other if we know each other's stories. You can go to the next slide. So week 3 was a really powerful week in our learning. We fast forwarded to the present and we looked at change makers that are making a difference right now in our society. So some of our features were Malala Yousafzai, as well as Amanda Gorman, as well as a local magazine in Minnesota, the Minnesota Women's Press, that's fighting for women's rights. And through that, we also then paired with local change makers who are making a change in our Minnesota communities. So we were fortunate to feature a Hennepin County judge, the mayor of our city, Richfield, a college professor, as well as our school's founder, Miss Rosa. And the change makers each had the opportunity to share about their childhood, their background, about the work that they do, and then the obstacles that they overcame. And this was one of the most powerful moments for our students because we had panelists from each so many different backgrounds. One was first generation from Mexico, from El Salvador, from Colombia, and then from the United States. But what happened was, as they were sharing the stories, the students were making the connection sign with each and every one of them over and over, because there's just an intermingling of the threads of their stories and where their passion came from and why they were doing the work that they were doing. And one of the powerful moments, again, was one of our panelists said, sometimes I think kids understand things better than grownups. The same way that you learn from us, we are also learning from you. And the following day after our panel, we had a family breakfast at our school where we invited in family members, so parents, aunts, grandparents, and we had representatives from our governor's office as well. And it was a giant celebration of the work that the kids were doing as far as their learning and their change-making process. And children shared about the favorite change makers they had learned about and those things. And it became a springboard for our next step, which we can go ahead and go to the next slide, which was then the students kind of taking ownership of the work themselves and saying, that there's power in their ideas, there's power in their thoughts. And we, again, kind of talked about that theme of what do we want our legacy to be that we'd brought up with early on with Born on the Water. And we talked about the power of writing for change makers. And we gave kids then the opportunity to go. So if we go to the next slide, we'll see a few examples of students' work. The first slide here is students sharing biography projects about change makers that they chose. And they wrote about their legacies, their character traits, their backgrounds. You can go to the next slide as well. I think what stands out to me is how the students had no requirements about what change makers they chose, and they chose people from all different walks of life, all different parts of history, all different parts of the world that had spoken to them and connected with them. And if you skip ahead to the next slide as well, then the kind of culminating project for them was to write about a change that they wanted to see in the world. And so students spent time drafting and writing a paragraph about the change that they want to make in the world. And then at the end of the 2 weeks, we brought in, again, invited in community. We invited in the leaders of our school, teachers that students had had. And the response was amazing. The adults were just so proud of the work that the students had done. If you skip forward again, and again, we read a letter that we'd received from the governor of our state. It said, part of it said, "Dear Partnership Academy third grade class, I want to congratulate you on the work you are doing as change makers. Please keep speaking up for what you believe in. The conversations that you start can drive great change." And for me, I reflected back to the beginning of our project with our student that said, "As a kid, I feel powerless." And to me, the unit that we put out and the information that the kids did and the research they did and the connections that they built with community members, I felt was a very empowering practice for the kids. And I was just so thrilled to see their confidence build as the unit went on, and hopefully for them to feel empowered to make a difference in our world. So thank you again for the time. We so appreciate the opportunity to share our students and our work with this panel today.
Thank you so much, Matt, for sharing about all of this awesome work. Next up, we will have Della Bryant and Shauna Russell with from the Purpose, Prep, and Promised Land.
Hello, good afternoon. My name is Shauna Russell. I'm a teacher, now administrator, but always forever a student at Purpose Prep Academy in Nashville, Tennessee, in elementary school. In the summer uprisings of 2020, I worked with organizers who spoke of a place called Promised Land, a community that was just one county over, founded in the Reconstruction period by USCT veterans, who founded a community around two pillars, a church and a school. I visited on my own, and then our school leadership team visited, and our relationship with the descendants of that place, their living archives of the Promised Land Heritage Association began. And that includes with Della Bryant, as well as Serina Gilbert, who's actually her sister, who's actually joining us on the call today. So Serina, if you could also introduce yourself.
Hello, I'm Serina Gilbert, and I serve as board chairman for the Promised Land Historic Site. I have served as a charter member of the organization that has started to work in the preservation of the site and as the executive director. Promised Land Historic Site tells the story of new freedom. The people who settled there were people who were coming out of slavery and into new and independent and a self-sufficient community that they built on their own. They had little help from the government and others in establishing themselves, other than pointing to them a community where there was land and property that they were able to access. And they actually purchased the land that they lived on. So it was an independent community that was intentionally built. And so Shauna has been, I guess, the curriculum writer for this project, as well as being responsible for its implementation. So I yield back to her.
Thank you. So how did we come to build this partnership? We can jump to the next slide. After we had visited and brought staff there, we had to take that work back to an elementary school. And so Purpose Prep was founded in 2013 by our brilliant scholar activist founder, Lagra Newman. And our explicit purpose was to provide an excellent education to children in North Nashville, a historically Black region where literacy rates in elementary schools have fallen below 10, below 5%, even lower in some cases. And Purpose Prep has rewritten this narrative in this area, and that our scholars consistently read, create, and achieve at levels competitive with the best schools across the nation. That being said, we are young. We're only 11 years old. And so, of course, we stand on the shoulders of ancestral giants, such as the founders of Promised Land and the ancestors even before them that had been stewarding a strong value for education and literacy specifically against death-defying odds for centuries. And as Serina's sister, Della, told me in one of our earlier planning calls together, she had been in education as a teacher and a principal for decades before us. And when it comes to people protesting or rewriting truth, she told me, Shauna, there will always be people like that. And this assuredness in resistance and without any fear really inspired us to think about how we could collaborate further. And for us to collaborate with the descendants in telling the story of Promised Land with our scholars, we had to begin with building our own historical knowledge in ourselves as educators and learning directly from them. And so as our unit planned out, we really placed a strong value on primary source knowledge and learning straight from the source. So next slide, please. And keeping with that value of primary source knowledge, I kick it back to you, Serina, just to tell us about who is Promised Land, who are these people, please teach us.
Okay, the first picture on the slide is a 5-generation family, and it is the mother, her daughter, granddaughter, and great-granddaughter. The mother, who is seated, was born into slavery, and she was the wife of a man whose name was Arch Nesbitt. Arch Nesbitt was a member of the U.S. colored troop, the United States colored troop that was a part of the Union Army. He settled with his wife in Promised Land after the Civil War. He's considered one of the founding fathers of the community. And with her is a daughter, and the daughter's was the first generation of freed persons who lived in Promised Land, and then followed by the second generation, the third generation, and the fourth. They're on that one picture, so that's pretty exciting. Also included, and I'm going to look at the picture over to the left of the slide, and on that picture, actually that's the right, and the other picture I told you is the left. But the picture of the students seated there, that's a group of students and teacher from about 1935, and they were called the Cabin Kids. They were a group of singers that were led by the teacher over on the far left, Mr. Dixon. This group were entertainment, but it was also a source of support to the school, in addition to the support that came from the county. The school was originally a private school that was established by the people who lived in the community on land that was donated by Arch Nesbitt's brother, John Nesbitt. And John Nesbitt had received injuries while he served with the U.S. Colored Troop that these injuries were life-sustaining, that precluded his ability to work, and especially as a farmer, which was the primary work of those people who first settled in the community. It was either farming or working at the Cumberland furnace, where they made iron products. And he wasn't able to do either of those. So he applied for disability from the Department of Army. And through, after 12 years of waiting, it wasn't until around close to 1880 before he received compensation. In that compensation that was paid retroactively, he was able to buy a significant amount of land in Promised Land, which equated to 125 acres of land. And he donated part of that to the to build a Promised Land school and a church. And that is the site that we are called the Promised Land Historic Site, and are working toward preserving. But about the students that are pictured there, they sang a cappella, and many of them lived into I think the last person to die died in around 2005. So I grew up knowing all of the people who are on this picture, including Professor Dixon, who was the teacher. Now, in the center at the top is Beverly Gilbert Williams, who happened to be my sister, and she was my business teacher in high school, shorthand and typing. And she taught in the Dickson County school system until 1995. So that's a picture of her at her career. And the next picture is, she is a descendant of Promised Land.
I think the audio muted. Can it, Serina, I'm not sure what happened.
I'm not either.
Okay,
Can you hear
now we
Oh,
can
yeah.
hear you again. Okay, go ahead.
One of her parents was a descendant of John Nesbitt, and the other parent was a descendant of another member of the U.S. U.S. Colored Troop who settled in Promised Land, and his name was Ed Van Leer. So that is the story of this slide. And if you look at the title, it says, the theme says, a legacy of strength, courage, and fortitude. These stories, as you were saying, excavating for the truth, it allows you to tell the truth. And the fact that they are people that went from the very first generation of settlers into the community to the most recent, that is a very important part of this story.
Mm-hmm. So thank you for the knowledge, for the wisdom, which is not yet in any textbook here in Tennessee. So before we kick it to the next group, wanted to go through how we represented that with students. So what we ended up doing, given that there's a gap in how this Reconstruction era legacy of education is taught in Tennessee. If we jump to the next slide, these are some of the essential questions that drove us throughout this unit. And what we ended up wanting our students to do as their praxis is to write a textbook chapter about Promised Land from primary source knowledge, from oral history interviews and email correspondence with descendants, critical secondary source analysis, and also an analysis of the House Bill 580 in Tennessee, which was at the time and in response to the 1619 project, outlining conversations surrounding race in the founding of America. And in Tennessee, that state context was so important for making sure that our students understood what they were creating and where that took place. And so how that took place over a series of 12 days, if you jump to the next slide, was we had key to this unit was the co-establishment of norms that was driven by the adults, but we wanted it to reflect a dialectical approach to history that we wanted to have throughout the unit. We landed on the norms that you see listed there. And then each time we approached a text, there was a cycle of annotate, build group consensus on key evidence, and make claims. We really wanted to make practice this approach that history is not the first thing you read. The first thing you read is not the truest. And so once we grounded ourselves in Nikita Stewart's 1619 essay, Why Can't We Teach This? Coupled with the Tennessee legislation that would outlaw anything like this, we had them consider the urgency of how Reconstruction should, could, or would not be taught in schools when it comes to writing their textbook chapter. So what did that look like in the end? In closing, the rigor, if you jump to the next slide, the rigor of our scholars' textbook work was amazing. We have a Marie on the left who, if you zoom in, you can see that she defines Reconstruction, this is verbatim, a social, economic, and political revolution in which white supremacists suppressed Black voting through violence and sought to reinstate racial hierarchy. And then we have Chase on the right, who titled his chapter The Hope and the Bad, which I think shows great nuance for an elementary school scholar, before hooking readers in with the fact that thousands of schools, including what would be now called micro schools, were founded by and for Black Americans in this era, most well before the Freedmen's Bureau came to town. So the intellectual life here that we were able to create together with our children was from the source. And we continue to be appreciative of our partnership with Promised Land being able to do that. And we hope it's just the beginning and are grateful for the 1619 Project work in highlighting their too hidden legacy.
Thank you so much, Shauna and Serina, for sharing about this awesome work. Lastly, we will have Shamia Truitt-Martin with Bull City Scholars.
All right. Hello, everyone. Yes, I am a member of the Bull City Scholars, and that is comprised of Charlene Martin-Klein, yours truly, and Michelle Gordon. And I just would like to start off by stating the quote that encapsulates why we did this project, right? The quote states, hold tight. It states, our inquiry project was designed to enhance critical thinking skills, foster a sense of belongingness, promote cultural relevance, and enlighten our scholars about the resilience and the thought-provoking historical narrative of Durham's Black Wall Street and its place in American history. We wanted to illuminate the fact that Durham's Black Wall Street was a wonderful place. And as according to Dr. W.E. Du Bois, it was the Mecca of all Black Wall Streets. And we wanted to basically teach our students why. Why was that so? I'm going to come from the community outreach component, right? First of all, our project entailed an inquiry-based formula where the students had a performance task, not only in one grade level, but the whole district. This was a district-wide initiative. So we had elementary schools, as well as middle schools, as well as the high schools embarking upon this inquiry-based project. And so some of the things that the students had to do was basically come up with answering the question, right? Why was Durham Black Wall Street considered the Mecca of all Black Wall Streets? Now, we could not have done this if it wasn't for our community partners, right? So the Hayti Center was the North Star of our basically understanding what we wanted to do and how we wanted to do it. And Angela Lee, the executive as well as artistic director of Hayti, was very instrumental, as Michelle states, of giving us our treasure trove of pertinent information and leading us down the right path, right? She was very instrumental in helping us stay focused on the certain things that happened in Durham that was instrumental in catapulting our project to a next level. For example, Stagville Plantation was definitely important for us to dive into and understand how that plantation really affected Durham in North Carolina. Stagville Plantation was the largest plantation in North Carolina. And after the Emancipation Proclamation came about, Stagville had all of these people, these wonderful African-American people that were innovative and tenacious and knew the importance of resilience. And they migrated to Durham's Black Wall Street section, Paris Street, right? Fayetteville Street, as we know of now, right? And we would not have been able to understand the importance of Stagville if it wasn't for Angela Lee, our executive director. All right, let's go to the next slide. In addition to that, we partner with Kamaya Truitt with the UNC Public Radio. She's the Director of New Talent and Community Partnership. She was very instrumental in helping guiding us to, places like NCCU, artifacts, and speaking to the curator of Durham Black Wall Street. And there we found out about John Merrick and how he always wore golden shoes, right? And why? Like those little research nuggets that really helped our project go to a next level. She was also very instrumental in the recording of our students. And let me tell you, when we did the recordings, right? In addition to all of the other performance tasks they had, making their newspaper article, having, Socratic seminars, basically doing their ACEs paragraph. This was literacy enriched assignment. It wasn't just, let's just look at, the different people or the different institutions. They had to read, analyze, and theorize everything that we did. And basically, when she came to record them, so we could be able to see how much of an impact it made on them, it was just breathtaking. If you don't mind, if you can just click, for example, and let our people hear. The audio, for example, go back to the other slide. I want them to hear the audio. Yeah, starting at 30. Thank you.
Okay.
I did not think that it was going to be in Durham. Like, it was like here. I honestly don't know why I thought that, but probably because when you think about like Wall Street, you think about like New York. I would guess like how like them like it's like they're like paving through like all the hate and segregation, and they're just like they're trying to like push through so people can stop trying to be like mean to them and like trying to stop them from what they want to accomplish. It's kind of like funny that they all helped each other in like the same thing, because in my notes it says John Merrick collaborated with Dr. Aaron Moore and Charles Spalding to shape Durham's entrepreneurial landscape, fostering African American economic progress.
Wow. And that was just a couple. It was just breathtaking. And even today, like right now, they're still talking about it. And they are so, like, their voices have been amplified and they feel valued. And they also feel like they're relevant and they understand that they came from great stock. But not only that, it also helped teach the other students about our heritage and what Durham Black Wall Street brought to the community. Now, I'm going to hurry up and talk about the text and what part of the text and why we chose the text that we did. The elementary school focused on Born on the Water, and the secondary schools focused on the 1619 project. Now we had to analyze our team, read and extrapolate the information from the text that was aligned to our inquiry, as well as ensuring that the inquiry was aligned to the text. And that was very powerful. Like, we extrapolated one quote from our illustrious Nicole Hannah-Jones when she stated, "But it would be historically inaccurate to reduce the contributions of Black people to the vast material wealth created by our bondage. Black Americans have also been and continue to be foundational to the idea of American freedom." When the students had to analyze that quote and talk about it and really, dive into it, it was just like, right? And we ensured that we incorporated information from the text that definitely inspired them, engaged them, motivated them, and it increased their literacy skills and their writing skills. Oh my goodness, you should see the newspaper article and their ACEs commentary. It's just so awesome, and you will see it soon. Needless to say, this was one of the best experience our team had. One of the things that you definitely have to take into consideration when you're trying to work with collaboration and community collaborators, you have to make sure you understand your mission. What is your mission all about? Our mission was to enlighten, empower our students, right? Also identify your community partners that will help catapult your project to the next level, right? And ensure that you have an open mindset, because things will change, right? And you have to be able to go with the flow. You can't be so stagnant into your idea and not let it be born into something else, because it's going to be great. And finally, enjoy it. Enjoy the ride. Enjoy the collaboration. Our 1619 project experience was just breathtaking. And I am so glad that we had this opportunity to work with the 1619 project team. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Shamia, for sharing about that awesome work. We have been answering a lot of questions in the chat directly. So the first question that we have for our panel is what advice do you have for other educators hoping to engage with the 1619 project in this community-focused way? Anyone can jump in.
I'll start off. Basically, really understand that it's attainable. You have the support from the team that's just invaluable. We wouldn't have been able to do it without the 1619 project team. DJ was just so wonderful in helping guide us and directing us to where we needed to go. And it just really helped out a lot. So you have the support that you need. And we really appreciated that.
Thank you, Shamia.
I can go. I think it was important for us, and I really encouraged the community in partnership aspect, because it was so important for us that our knowledge was sourced from what was around us. We had felt a connection to the Promised Land School, but for us, the bow, or the fist rather, that tied these learnings together was that vision of the 1619 project. And how could somewhere like Promised Land exist in our backyard and it not be central to our understanding of the African American legacy of educational resistance in the South? Brown v. Board and desegregation is typically portrayed in textbooks as the greatest victory, but that was just federal de jure that, one, wasn't followed, and two, leaves out 3 centuries of Black-led educational resistance. So if we're driving towards making sure children know their history, it's not enough to say, oh, here's what happened. They have to be equipped to criticize, why don't I, not just I, but why doesn't everybody know this? And you can do that with who is around you if you look.
Thank you, Shauna.
I agree. And really thinking about your community and community partnerships as those outside of the school, but in the school as well. Like for me, none of this work is possible or actually meaningful without the support of the other home or the other educational space that children learn in consistently. And the more that you can all be on the same page and the more you can understand their concerns or things that they're worried about, the better you can create a comprehensive curriculum, I think.
Yeah, and I think for me, as far as advice goes, is tapping into your network. Just as we were talking amongst our school community about different change makers and different people that might be able to talk to our students, just a couple emails and people just started to be a buzz. Hey, I know the mayor. Hey, I've got this professor that would be great. Hey, the governor is, working with this people. And once you just kind of put it out there for people in your network, it really kind of snowballed for us. So I would say tap into the people that are already around you in your local communities too.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So, thank you for all of the questions that have been asked. We have been answering them directly in order to keep with time. If you have any additional questions, please reach out to 1619@pulitzercenter.org. Thank you so much for joining this panel. Thanks again to our amazing panelists for their awesome insights. Our next conference event is our Why Didn't I Know That? Equipping Pre-Service Teachers with Underreported Histories panel, which starts at 3:45, and we hope to see you all there.
Thanks again. This has been a wonderful experience.
So
Thank
much,
you so much.
everyone.